Hi, everybody. So I want to introduce you guys to Wyatt, and he is a friend of mine. And we've been talking online for quite a long time. And his wife is awake and she woke you up, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was an interesting process, that's for sure.
yeah. But now that everything's happening with the divine masculine and people that are male are starting to really tap more and more into the spiritual aspect of what's going on with the awakening. I wanted to talk to Wyatt because he has a lot more experience with religion and all the things that have kind of held a lot of people back. And it seems to be very on the table right now. There's a lot of people that are struggling because religion is being, like, all the things that don't really work are being pushed to the surface right now. So Wyatt and I talked
So,
about, go ahead.
and that's partially part of my awakening. I read a book by Jonathan Cahn called The Harbinger, which basically is a bunch of tea leaves that were left behind 9/11 to mm, like prove that it was semi supernatural. And that's the part of religion that they kind of push out as some of the supernatural stuff, whereas that book brought a lot of stuff into, the mystery and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And actually, I read that book, and then somehow I stumbled upon I Pet Goat 2, which is it's partially about 9/11 or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And that was
I
like
was
a
like,
baseball bat against just swung against my head after watching that.
oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that day. I was like, I was on vacation and I just turned the TV off after it started. And I was like, okay, it started. And I knew that everything that we're doing now, like that was the start of the awakening, in another way, because we've tried to do this over
Mm,
and over again.
yeah.
But um, I want to talk about, there's been a few really big people in social media, big influencers that have been getting kind of brought to the surface, and who they are has been getting questioned, but mostly because of the religion that they're in. So I want to talk a little bit about what's called the ballerina farm. And there's a beautiful person who is a ballerina, and she was not really allowed to go and experience that as a career because she married someone who was in the Mormon religion. And that's not how it works in the Mormon religion. You you get married and you have babies. And not everybody does that, but I think it was a very prominent family. And that's basically what happens quite often in that religion because it's part of their, I don't want to say indoctrination, but it's part of their routine. And
Tradition. Yeah.
yeah, um, and I've had family members in that religion and friends, and there's a lot of different things that happen that haven't been so nice. And I don't feel like women are really um, seen for who they are as a real person so much.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic how this can happen, and especially within the Mormon religion, and it's there's a lot of Christian faith-based people too that are like, well, the wife stays home and works. And it doesn't have to be that way. Me and my wife are in kind of a dual nurturing couple. She works corporate and I farm. Well, I work from home basically. So I get thrown into a lot of nurturing stuff because I am the one at home. So I run kids around to athletic events and stuff. And it's all can go back to the ego even with these traditions. To break tradition is to break your ego down too. And he definitely is so caught up in and that's how he sees his wife, and now they have 8 children. But I mean, that is also a very interesting story. It's not completely like she's not completely under his thumb. She got a foot stuck out somehow. But um, and I can't say for sure on these relationships.
No.
If she was completely unhappy, uh, there's ways out too. But it is unfortunate, and they can also fall into the spell too, that this is the
Hmm.
way it's supposed to be.
Exactly. Totally. And there's another one in social media as well called Nara Smith. And so they kind of, once one of them was shown, then the next one was shown, and everybody in social media that has been paying attention to them have been piping in with their opinion. And I think what it is it's bringing to the surface that these kind of ideas are not really sovereign and they're not going to go forward that way. So everything has to come to the surface, just like what's coming to the surface in the world. So does it have to come to the surface in these groups that are kind of like, oh, well, we do it this way and we don't care what you're doing and we don't like you because you're doing it that way. Because religion in general was used for division, in my opinion.
Hmm. Oh yeah, just yeah, if you have the etymology of the word religion,
Yes.
you're setting yourself up into groups.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
she uh, and it's interesting with these trad moms. I mean, there is some creativity in with it. I mean, especially with that, all these meals from scratch. I mean, I'm the head cook in my house or whatever. And so I mean, I've so many things my mom passed away in 2020 of pancreatic cancer, and I had been the chef for my wife and her kids before we started having kids of our own. And I don't know, me and all of my guy friends truthfully can cook is the craziest thing.
That's
um
good.
so um so I respect that. But the especially from scratch. I mean, I still buy a lot of stuff in town and so on and
Mhm.
so forth. But my sister makes rolls from scratch and and pizza crust, and that's pretty neat. It tastes amazing, but I don't get that. I don't get that far into depth on it. I'm kind of a quick and dirty
Yeah.
type guy. If I can cook in
It's
about a half hour.
that's me too. I like to cook quickly. Unless I'm really creating something, I'm creating
Hmm.
something nobody's ever done before. That's some kind of weird experiment, and it doesn't always turn out very well. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so just kind of thinking about what is it, if you are in a religion, what is it that really works for you? And taking that and then, incorporating that in your life, because some things are really good. Like it is good to be moral. It is good to be kind. There's a lot of things there that are really good, but it's not good to do it at your own detriment either, which I think religion really does teach, basically sacrifice yourself for everybody
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
Well, it's the duality. It's no different than the Masons or whatever. It's always the good and the evil on both sides of the picture. What can be used for either. Um,
Yeah.
and we go to a smaller church, and we go basically every Sunday. I have preached at the church before, or done the sermon or message or whatever. Um, and usually I throw some red pills in there about sovereignty usually. Um, because it goes, our church even has a separate book of law and orders. And in the message I gave the one Sunday, I said, if Jesus had knew that this would what it would come to, he would throw that thing straight into a fire and burn it.
Mhm.
And so um but there's a lot of community aspect of it. We just had an ice cream social last Sunday.
Mhm.
I made sweet pickles for it, and I probably got in trouble for that because I didn't use the church traditional recipe. I it's my own recipe because I didn't have one of the ingredients.
Oh.
But I'm not gonna lose too much sleep over it. But
Mm-mm. No, it's funny. And I think a lot of that stuff will start to be questioned too, like the get-togethers as far as that goes is great. I think it's amazing, and it's a safe space for kids and for families. But when you get into the bigger and the higher up in the church, the safety aspect seems to go away, and it's
yeah,
not as safe for people.
and it makes
So,
you really wonder what hierarchy is going on in those bigger churches that just makes that even an like, how does that nefarious business start or happen is what's scary.
mhm. Well, I actually think that the nefarious started them in the first place.
Hmm. Yeah, and to
So,
keep your
yeah.
job or keep your position,
Mhm.
you got to
Yep.
abide by the rules,
Mhm.
the unwritten rules.
The unwritten rules, and everything was done in a circular way. So it's like take over the mind, take over the physicality, take over the relationship aspect, take over all the things and create indoctrination with everything. And that can be done through the TV or through the church or through, whatever. But it doesn't mean that there aren't good things in it too. Like there are TV shows that I think are showing us so much of who we are. And then there's something that's really nasty that I don't want to watch.
Hmm.
So really being discerning about your own sovereignty and what feels good to you and what doesn't is very important right now. Mhm.
No, and that's actually exactly, and that's what I would expect people to take from their church is not the whole truth and nothing but the truth. It's basically like a radio show or what me and you are even doing. And
Mhm.
that's the other thing I preached upon as like you listening to me as not a guru, but as a an advisor, like, oh, okay, take what resonates, the whole truth or movement in general, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. Just because I said it doesn't mean it's the truth or not. But
Mhm. It might be the truth for me or the truth for you, but it
yeah.
doesn't mean it's the truth for everybody. And that's something I think we haven't been used to because we wanted to wake everybody up. Like, if I'm awake, how come you're not awake? How come you're
Yeah,
not
oh
doing what
yeah.
I'm doing? And I think we're just starting to see the other side of that. Like, people are like, okay, just let them be and let them live
Yeah.
their own experience and they'll get there when they get there. But we just have let that go. Like, that's pretty recent, I feel like.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
me and you have talked about that in the past. I'm like, why is people not waking up? And now I see, like, okay, now I understand. They just let them be, and I'm fine
mhm.
with that now. And I wasn't before.
No, I wasn't either at the beginning of all this stuff, but the longer I've been, talking and doing things with awakened people, the less I care about what unawakened people might be doing because they're on their own journey. And if I push them, you can break them.
Hmm.
And I
That's
don't
right.
think we think about that very much. We just, because we were used to, well, trying to validate ourselves.
Hmm.
Like if I believe this, then
Yeah,
you need to
that's
believe
right.
it.
We need
Yeah.
vindication,
Hmm. Yeah.
and as we've ascended, the ego has dropped, and our desire for vindication has faded.
Yeah, we don't care nearly as much as we used to. And we're not as attached even to family members that don't get it. It's like just love them anyway. Just do things that don't have to do with that.
Hmm.
Eat cake together, watch a movie together, you know? Like who cares about the other stuff? You know, let it be. I want to talk a little bit about the Olympics because to me that was so blatant and so, I mean, to me it was hilarious because it was obviously a program. It was part of the movie. The White Hats did that to awaken a lot of people, and it really made a lot of people mad. Um, Shocked them, just shocked them, and they're all over the place talking about it now. But it was kind of like the last thing that maybe the not so good guys were going to be doing. It was like to show you this is who they are, you know, this is what they wanted.
Well, I think it goes into how asleep um, the public is. I mean, I know a lot of people that they are starting to see that yeah, there is a evil demonic, well, in the movie anyways, but in the
Mhm.
past there has been evil demonic um, force that was behind entertainment,
Mhm.
and now it has to be put so far um, obscenely noticeable for people at the upper echelon of the fleet to like notice like what this is. I mean, this is the conspiracy theorists are maybe just right that there are more nefarious people in charge than we realize.
Yeah. Yeah. And they called it, what was so funny in French, they called it the Last Supper. Like
Hmm.
that was the name of the opening ceremony. And then they denied that it was the Last Supper. They said it had something to do with the Greek gods instead. So, you know, just the back and forth discussion. And they made the Olympians very miserable as well with cardboard beds and no air conditioning. And I guess they're kind of running out of food as well.
Oh gosh, I haven't read much of that, but it's so hard to keep up with pop culture.
Mhm. It is. Yeah. And I only do it through TikTok. So I just get little snips of information, but it's kind of amazing the reaction that's come out of it. And I think it really did help. So it was a great thing that they did to awaken so many just by one activity, really.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the question that I hope they're asking is why in the hell do they even, would that even be necessary to poke at somebody else? What for them? Like we understand it, but like
Yeah.
what are they trying to, for the normies or asleep, what are they trying to be telling us? This is ridiculous that evil could actually have this much power.
Yeah. Yeah. And it will just basically gain speed, I think. I think they're preparing people to
Hmm.
actually see the underbelly of a lot of, you know, Hollywood and a lot of the three-letter agencies and the music industry and all of that and how it was connected to people that were in control. Um,
Hmm.
so
That's
it'll
right.
link in. Yeah, it'll link in, but it'll give them like a reason to say, look at this. This is what they were doing. And it depends on what
Hmm.
parallel you're in, like whether you believe it was real or not, too. Like to me, I was like, wow, they really went all the way with that one. And to some other people that were like, you know, crying, they were like, how could they do it? You know? So
Hmm.
it's a totally
And
different perception.
that's the craziest part. I like had no emotions to that, and I had no emotions to the July 13th situation. that happened in Butler, PA. I like, man, a movie, but but it's so hard when people are talking to you about it. Can you believe that? I mean, like, well,
Yeah,
yeah, things, yeah, it's a wild world out there.
it is. And it will appear to a lot of people to be extremely wild over the next few months. And they'll probably be scared and worried. And how anchored we are into calm is going to help them be more calm, I think, throughout this process, because it's not going to be the easiest process for a lot of people. But the parallels are going to separate again after this is done, and they're not that close right now.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
they're, yeah,
I'm excited to see what happens.
yeah.
I've been obviously dealing with a lot of anxiety on the high energy days, and today has not. Yesterday was wonderful. Monday today has been rough. Um, Heavy
Yeah.
dosing with magnesium oil. The directions it said to rub on the bottom of your feet. So before the put it under my feet and put my socks back on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
Uh,
lot. There's a lot of anxiety. It's definitely important to like spiral it out of your body because it's coming at us like in an intense way. And it's to release the body's programs that keep us from advancing.
mhm.
Doesn't mean it feels good.
Now I relate it to Jesus and his ascension story where he is bearing the cross and in the story he's dragging it from town to town as he's getting beat or whatever. And I was like, well, if that's what he went through, I guess if this is the cross that I'm bearing, I will do it and I will
Mhm.
suffer the consequences. But we know on the other side, it's glory days.
Yeah, it is. And there will be a beautiful jubilee and a jubilant feeling within us as everything becomes more and more free. And I think it'll just depend on who you are and what your perception is to how free you actually are in that moment. But it will just gradually get bigger and bigger. But at first things have to fall apart. And that's
Yeah,
what we're in. We're in the fall apart.
it seems like everything is escalating towards that
Yeah.
rapidly,
And
finally.
it's kind of like a cartoon
Oh,
a
yes.
little bit. Yeah. It's crazy. But so what do you think it's going to be like for the people who are in these religions after all this stuff has been brought to the surface? I know that a lot of people will choose not to be here, but the ones that stay, like, how do you see them handling all of that in the future?
And you threw this question at me earlier, and I really don't quite have a perfect answer yet.
It's okay.
I I truly I'm just hoping as time goes on that the timeline keeps getting better and that they are able to handle it um in every show I listen to and I listen to like that's one thing I respect about Brad. He has the most broad spectrum of relationships, and
Mhm.
every single person I listen to says religion is going to be one of the toughest aspects to get over and find out that what we've considered the safe haven has been not necessarily always, but has definitely been nefarious and not as great as we thought it was. And
Right.
so that's why it's going to be so tough.
I think so. I think it'll be really tough on people. I think that they'll decide to probably meet anyway, first
Hmm.
in larger groups and then in smaller and smaller groups and start to
Yeah.
talk about their own awakening.
Hmm.
But it's
Yeah,
going to
that's
be
right. It's just
hard
going
on
to
a
have to
lot of people. Mhm.
break down into each awakenings groups, each, or if you'd call it each parallels Um,
Yep. Yeah. And some of the pastures may continue for a while, even
yeah,
after a lot of stuff comes out, because it doesn't mean that they're a negative person
no,
at all. But it was created by man. You know, a lot of the written works are not necessarily from Jesus, and there's so many that have been left out, and there's the King James Bible where he came and got in the middle of it and altered it. So I
hmm
think that it's been altered over and over again, and not just this book, but all of them. But at the
well,
basic,
when you
at,
get into, there's so many versions, and I don't even know how many to count, but I know when you when I've got into a concordance or whatever, and in my studies for when I was preaching, because you got to use scriptures obviously, and you can just scroll and there's 150 different versions of the text that you can read,
oh,
and
yeah,
that's where it's easily get manipulated.
yeah, because, that was a long time ago that he was here, and he was
Hmm
here. He was an actual person, Jesus, but the son, the whole religion part of it originates in Egypt. Like a lot of that has
hmm
to do with Egyptian stuff and, the sun worship. So
hmm
it's just a very interesting thing. And I think that they will have to basically research and go backwards and see where it all started. And that will be available to people who've been really indoctrinated. And they'll start to
hmm
see that they matter, whether they're doing those things that have been laid out for them or not.
Well, and that goes back to like you were talking about pastors and church, but that's why I've stayed involved with the church, is because I know there's going to be a time that we are called into action for
Mhm.
to do our due diligence of being awake when
Yeah.
the time comes to soften the blows.
Yeah. And I think in the smaller churches, it's going to be a lot more holistic and a lot easier for people to do that. So, um, staying in there and doing that, like that's a mission,
Hmm
basically.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's a really good thing to do. Um, I do think that people will see the Ethiopian Bible at some point. They will see the old calendar, and we will probably go back to the 13 months with 28 days in each month. I think that will change. Um, and people will gather up and talk to each other about their experience. It will turn into not a pasture, whoever's in the pews, not,
Congregation.
yeah, not the congregation, but the congregation will become the people who talk
Hmm
in the future. So it will start to change. And it's up to them whether they choose to go through ascension in the way that we are, in our bodies. And we have to allow that too.
Yeah, like you said earlier in the pre-show that it'd go to more of a roundtable council type meeting, as
Mhm.
far as exactly basically what you and me are doing right now, but in a minorly larger format, 10, 20 people or something.
Yeah. It kind of feels like King Arthur, like when he had the round table, everybody will come together and talk about what they think is really good for everyone, and nobody's in charge of anything. They're doing it together. And I think
Hmm
hierarchy in general is going away completely. So, you'll still have parents that
hmm
say, no, you can't do that today, or whatever, or no,
hmm
that is not a good idea to touch that hot stove. But
hmm
you won't have like a boss in the future.
Hmm.
telling you what to
And
do.
teachers,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
teacher, if you do, teachers might be a little bit different. But it's, I mean, we could talk all day about where things are going as far as education, uh, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
But I struggle with my kids too. Like, am I being a dictator, or am I being a parent, or am I not doing, or even if okay, am I just brushing over something? Like I should have been more assertive there.
Yeah. It's hard at this point because, I mean, honestly, I think that in the future, there will be somebody home at all times, all day, like helping with kids. And
Hmm.
I don't think we'll probably have as many at once because you're not able to give
Our,
as much attention to
our
them,
life
you know?
expectancy would be longer too, though. Our
Yeah,
birthing life would be longer.
much longer. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't really see people having more than one kid at a time, and then that kid gets almost completely raised, and then maybe they have another one, or maybe they wait 50
Mm,
years and then they have another one,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So it's going to be a really interesting time. The kids will come in where they don't actually need a lot of teaching either.
Hmm.
So they'll know what divine math is, they'll know how the universe works, they'll know what their past lives were, and they're starting
Oh,
to
they
do
do.
that now. So they're starting to talk about it. And it's a beautiful thing to watch because then you know also that there's a child that's going through the ascension in their body and they're going to be here teaching other people and just sharing who they are.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, like even with my own son, he's going to school, and I don't know, we're going to send him to public school, and right or wrong, I mean, we survive, me and my wife survive. So, and it
Yeah.
might only be for a couple months. It might be for a year. I don't know. We'll find out. I know I'm going to cry when he gets on the school bus.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He'll be fine. I mean, but it probably will change pretty quickly.
I
I
have
think
that feeling
almost
too.
all the systems will change really quickly. And I also get that probably one parent will almost always be home with
Hmm.
them, you know, and it'll be more of a community type thing. Eventually, we'll be in communities and the kids may have a mentor. You may have
Hmm.
5 kids that go over to this person's house every, on
Hmm.
Tuesday and they learn how to do this,
Yeah.
maybe they're finger painting that day. Who knows?
Yeah. Because we still have to have niches. I mean, how crazy would that be? Everybody's great at everything.
Oh, yeah. No, people, they're going to follow what they want to do
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
find I think too that, like let's say somebody is a creator of metal works or something,
Yep.
and you have like a 10-year-old that's like, that's who I want to be my mentor
Hmm.
because I want to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
You know? So I think it's going to be really good. I know that, I have nephews that are homeschooled and their school, the amount of school that they actually have to do to make all those
Hmm.
things
Yep.
happy. It's like,
Protocols.
yeah, protocols or whatever. It's like 3 or 4 hours a day. That's it.
Yeah, curriculum, or I don't know if that's what they
Mhm.
called it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a friend
So,
of the family that's in like a community homeschool type thing, and yeah, a lot less schooling for them,
yeah,
or
there's
education time, or what.
a lot of fluff that really doesn't matter. And then they don't teach them any life skills. So I think life
Hmm.
skills are going to be huge, like how to grow a little garden,
Yeah.
you know, how to do those kind of things and how to play and learn. And that's one thing that we've lost as adults is how to play. And
Hmm.
play is what actually manifests things. So if you can bring your play back in, things that you loved to do when you were little, then you'll start to manifest again. So that's another
No, that's
whole.
right. Well, yeah, like it's laughter's the best medicine, plays like the best teaching.
Mhm. It is. Yeah, you learn way faster. So I think that just, if you have people in your life that are extremely extremely religious, let's just say, and you're worried about them because you absolutely love them, just hold space for them right now and be there to maybe offer a few tidbits as they start to learn more because the world is going to show them what's going
Yeah, there's a train coming and it ain't slowing down. As I
on.
say,
No.
no, nothing can stop what is coming. And
Mhm.
we are
Yeah,
getting vindication that we're not crazy, but something is actually coming.
I know. So that's really good. So I'm gonna put Wyatt's Telegram below. And if you're interested, in listening to somebody who's really thinking about a lot of this stuff, then I would go ahead and join it and let us know what you want to hear about from the divine masculine. What matters to you? Like, I don't think that there's been that many speaking up at this point, unless it was more about the conflict. So we're coming out of the conflict and going into the spirituality. And now it's time for that to start to bubble up and people to start to talk about that. So I'm really grateful that you came on here onto
Yeah.
YouTube and talked to me because I know it's been a long process of thinking about it. So I'm really happy that you said yes. So that's good.
Yeah, no problem. And I just want to reiterate, I am nobody special. I'm not an actor or anything. I just had an awakening about 2.5 years ago, and I haven't had a haircut since the craziest part. I haven't decided if I am gonna. At first I said when I'm not gonna cut it until DJT comes back, and now I'm like, well, if he does, or I don't know, it's all part of the ego too. Like I don't know. Some days I want to cut it, and other days I don't. But regardless, um, yeah, I post some stuff on Telegram, but I'll probably more than likely be back on Honey's show talking about divine masculine stuff. And we were actually supposed to talk about creativity today, but we didn't get around to that. So I guess there will be
Oh,
have to be a
right.
second show.
Yes. Yeah. Creativity is so important. So yeah, we will talk about that for sure. We'll do a
But
show on that.
all right, thank you for inviting me on, Honey. It's been
Thank
wonderful.
you. Thanks for coming. It was great.
You
Bye,
bet. Ciao.
everybody.